Every scratch DJ has that moment where something just clicks. For me, it was this combo right here. Just 2 scratches, but together, they really made me sound like I knew what I was doing. Both of these techniques are taught in way more detail inside my full scratching course. But in this video, I'm going to break them down step by step and show you how to combine them. My name is Blakey and I'm a former DMC champion, and I have taught hundreds of DJs how to achieve clean and confident scratches. So let's break it down properly. Now, the first scratch technique that we're going to be breaking down is called the drop scratch. And it's actually one of the most basic scratch techniques that you can learn because it doesn't involve the crossfader at all. Now, here on deck 1 of my DDJ Groove 6, I've loaded in my own scratch sample tool. And if you would like to download that for free so that you can practice with the same samples that I'm using in this video, then just hit the link in the description and I will email them to you for free. So for the drop scratch, we're going to be using the first sample on my scratch sample tool. And I've got that set to Hot Q1. And the first thing we need to do is make sure we get our hand placement on the jog wheel correct. So let's play the sound. And let's put our hand on the jog wheel to stop the sound and bring it back to the beginning of this first sample. And now what we need to do is we need to make sure that our hand is around the 9 o'clock position at the beginning of the sample. So right here, I've got my hand around the 9 o'clock position, and you can see inside Serato that the playhead position is just before the sample begins. Now for the drop scratch, we simply take our hand off the jog wheel and let the sample play. And then we put our hand on the jog wheel and bring it back to the start of the sample. Like that. Now we want to try and aim for our hand to be back around the 9 o'clock position at the beginning of the sound after we pulled it back. So my hand is slightly out of position here. So let's play the sound again, and this time when I put my hand on the jog wheel to stop the sound, I'm going to put my hand around this position here. Like that. And now when I bring the sample back to the start, you'll see that my hand is perfectly placed around the 9 o'clock position. So this is the movement that we need to practice. We let the sound play, put our hand around here to stop the sound, and then bring it back to that 9 o'clock position. So that right there is the drop scratch. And the most difficult thing about learning the drop scratch is bringing the sound back to just before the start of the sample every time. I recommend drilling this movement until you feel comfortable bringing the sample back to the beginning every single time. And then we can put a beat on the other deck and start practicing it in time with a track. So hand around the 9 o'clock position, crossfader on, let the sound play, stop it around here, and then bring it back to the start. And then let's speed it up. Once you've practiced it over a piece of music and you can keep that rhythm nice and on beat, that's when I recommend trying out some different patterns of the drop scratch. Because it's all very well learning a scratch technique and being able to execute it perfectly, but if you don't know how to use that technique to make different unique patterns and rhythms, then you could end up sounding very robotic in your scratching. That's why inside my full scratching course, not only do I break down every single scratch technique step by step in detail, but each scratch technique also has its own video where I show you how to make different patterns with that technique. This will ensure that you have many different variations of each scratch technique to apply to your DJ sets. If you'd like to check out the full course, then just hit the link in the description. So now using this same instrumental, I'm going to show you a few different pattern variations of the drop scratch. One very common mistake I see DJs make when learning the drop scratch is they don't keep their hand nice and relaxed on the jog wheel. If your hand is super tense, then you're going to struggle to bring that sample back to the beginning perfectly every time. If you're struggling with this, then this technique should help. So with your hand around the 9 o'clock position at the beginning of the sound, let the sound play, but then bring the sound back super slowly to the start of the sample. Now the reason this helps is to execute this cleanly, bringing the sample back slowly, you have to have a nice relaxed hand. If your hand is super tense, then you're going to end up bringing it back with a kind of jagged motion. But by forcing yourself to bring the sample back super slowly, you're also going to force yourself to have a relaxed hand. Now the next scratch technique that we're going to learn is called the chirp scratch, and it's one of the most foundational and fundamental scratch techniques that you will ever learn. It's also a scratch technique that I use more than any other in an actual DJ set, because when done right, it actually sounds better than most scratch techniques. It's not too complicated, it's not too busy, and it's really pleasing on the ears when done well. So let's break down exactly what the chirp scratch is. Now for this, I'm going to use sample number 3 on my free scratch tool. Again, the link is in the description if you would like to download that. And the sample sounds like this. So it's got a really nice percussive beginning to the sample, which is very important for the chirp scratch. Now again, we want to make sure that our hand is around the 9 o'clock position, right at the beginning of the sample in serrato. Now the first thing we need to do is make sure we keep our hand on the jog wheel. With the drop scratch that we just learned, we actually take our hand off the jog wheel and let the sound play. That is not what we want to do with the chirp scratch. For the chirp scratch, we need to keep our hand on the jog wheel at all times, and this is going to give us real control over the sample. So the first step is to push the sound forward until your hand gets to around here, around the 11, 12 o'clock position, and then turn the crossfader off. And then what we do is we bring the sound back to the beginning of the sound, and about halfway through the reverse motion, we're going to turn the crossfader back on. Now I'm going to break that scratch down super slow so that you can see exactly what I'm doing. Now, as you can see, the faster you get with this movement, the better the chirp scratch sounds. But when you're first starting out, it's very important to start super slow so that you get a full grasp on what it is you're trying to achieve at a faster speed. Once you're doing the scratch consistently at a slow speed, then you can just start building up the tempo until you can perform it as fast as I did there. Now let's play a beat on this deck, and I'm going to perform the chirp scratch starting very slowly and then speeding it up, keeping it in time with the beat on this deck. The chirp scratch is such an important scratch technique because it unlocks creativity and musicality. There is so much that you can do with the chirp scratch, so many different patterns and variations, and you can even do them in a triplet timing like I did there at the end of that demo. Now, of course, this scratch technique as well as many others are broken down in even more detail inside my full scratching course. But hopefully this will give you a nice head start if you're learning solo. Now let's try out some different pattern variations of the chirp scratch over the same instrumental. now let's talk about how to combine these two scratch techniques. So for this, I'm going to use sample number 4 on my free scratch tool. And it's quite a long sample, and it's simply just a slowed down version of sample number 1. And it's perfect for scratch techniques like this one. So just a very quick reminder, the drop scratch sounds like this. And the chirp scratch sounds like this. And this is what a very simple combination of the two sound like. But the best thing about this scratch combo is you can perform any number of chirp scratches followed by any number of drop scratches. So now I'm going to vary the number of times I do each scratch to show you what that sounds like. So this combination is 2 chirps followed by a drop, followed by another chirp and then another drop. 2 chirps followed by 1 drop, and then 1 more chirp, and then 1 more drop. When learning this combination, that is the pattern that I recommend you drill over and over until you feel completely comfortable performing that consistently and cleanly. Now let's take a look at some of my favourite patterns combining the chirp scratch and the drop scratch. If this video helped, then my ultimate scratching course goes way deeper. It's got over 80 lessons, step-by-step drills, full pattern and combo breakdowns, and even practice beats that you can download. Honestly, it's everything that I wish I had when I was learning. Click the link in the description to check it out. And if you enjoyed this video and you want to check out more from me and my channel, then YouTube recommends this video right here.